The old saying goes, it's what you learn after you think you know it all that counts. And man, had I not read the Sacramento Bee this morning online through an article somebody sent me, well, I don't even want to think about how completely misinformed I was. Because we've done lots and lots of stories about Sacramento. But when I think of Sacramento, I think of the story where a bunch of black people shut down a yoga studio because the yoga studio was using hip-hop music during some of their classes. I think they had one of the owners was black too. Anyway, everybody was all unhappy at the white folks for using black music. But then I think among all the other stories we've done in Sacramento, I think of these several stories in a row we did about black on Asian violence and how Asian people were victims by the dozens and dozens and dozens of robbery, murder, assault, harassment, threats, and how they just kept having meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And finally, at the end of all the meetings, one of the city councilmen stood up and told the truth, which is, well, not much we can do about this black on Asian violence. I guess Asian people just have to learn how to deal with it. And so that's why I was so surprised to learn that all that stuff we've been reporting is basically not true, because the real victims in Sacramento are black people. They are victims of institutional racism, which causes them problems throughout their entire lives. So why don't we do this? Why don't we just run a really quick clip from a woman talking about institutional racism. The story talks about institutional racism at length, but when they get this pseudo-psychologist up there to talk about it, she kind of doesn't mention what she's really talking about, which is how white people are always messing with black people and causing them lifelong psychological problems. And then why don't we go back to that Asian story, kind of just as a reminder of what's really happening in Sacramento, that black people are not the victims of racial hostility. Black people are the perpetrators of it.
HealthNet pulled together a group of subject matter experts around trauma and how it impacts our community and what it means to build a resilient community. So our hope is that we can continue the conversation and make sure that the conversation is meaningful, but also make sure that we have some outcomes. The important part of trauma is ensuring there's interventions in place to make sure that folks do not get lost in kind of the cycle. We know that kids experience trauma at really high levels, have higher incidence of chronic diseases. And so if we really are trying to build a healthy community, sometimes we need to start with the reason why the diseases are happening in later stages of their lives. And that starts with dealing with the trauma they experienced as a child.
Another spike in crime targeting the Asian community in South Sacramento has left people living there and working there taking bold steps to stay safe. Good evening, I'm Tony Lopez.
And I'm Christina Janes. This here is video of a past robbery during the last spike in crime when a victim was confronted in their driveway after returning home. Police say it's happening in the Meadowwood and Fruit Ridge pocket areas.
New tonight, CBS 13 Sharon Roger is live from police headquarters in South Sacramento with how people are fighting back. Sharon.
Tony and Christina, these numbers are concerning for the Sacramento Police Department. They've allocated a lot of resources over the last several months to help address this issue of crimes targeting Asian communities. And while one neighborhood has seen a big improvement, 2 others are now the victims of these armed crimes.
Just a few weeks ago, this surveillance video captures the disturbing moments when 2 South Sac Asian residents were robbed at gunpoint outside their home near the Elk Grove Florin Road corridor.
Hearing that crime is ticking back up, I'm really afraid for my family.
Kent Tran, who didn't wish to show his face, has lived in South Sacramento his whole life, and now he fears for his life.
I'm very alarmed. Me, myself, I've actually armed myself I have surveillance system.
Tran is among many in the community who have acquired weapons to protect themselves. The manager of this grocery store on Stockton Boulevard says they too have armed themselves with stun guns and have nightly security.
Part of that is language barrier and not knowing or having the right tools to contact the police department.
Sacramento police are seeing an uptick of robberies, carjackings, and home invasions, rising by 25% in the Meadowview neighborhood, 8% in the Fruit Ridge Pocket area, but a significant decrease in crimes against Asians in Oak Park, where police have focused resources.
Some of those potential suspects may be shifting to other areas of the city based on the efforts that we've committed to that neighborhood.
The crimes are happening mainly in residential areas and often poorly lit streets.
They're coming home and they're being targeted as they get out of their cars. They're being approached from behind normally, and the suspects are armed.
Now a community on edge, doing what it can to stay vigilant.
I know with the holiday season coming around, more and more is going to happen, but I'm just hoping that people stay diligent, help the police, and let's just catch these guys and get them off our streets.
I really encourage you to go back and read that story from the Sacramento Bee. Should be easy to find from the headlines. I mean, it's a long story, and they go through the whole thing, right? It's like, well, there have been cases in Starbucks where black people have been asked to leave just because they weren't buying anything. And there were cases in the Bay Area where some white woman called the police on a bunch of black people who were having a barbecue. This is proof positive of unbelievable white on black hostility and violence that is ruining the lives of black people, because every reporter in America knows that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. That's the greatest lie of our generation. That's the lie we expose here every day, without racism, without rancor, without apology, and without worrying about making a few black kids angry.